So it is my great pleasure to have the chance to introduce our speaker for the month, Emily Mann, Artistic Director and Resident Playwright at the McCarter Theater. We're so thrilled to have her with us for so many reasons. She's got an incredible record of accomplishment over those 25 years, 125 productions, something like that you've overseen. And what's really striking to me is the reputation that the McCarter Theater has developed during the time of your leadership there as being not only the most productive, the busiest regional theater in the country, and not only the one that's earned the Tony Award for Best Regional Theater, but one that has a reputation across the country as being the place where important theater happens, where there's groundbreaking work, where there's really impactful theater in so many different ways. And it just keeps getting better. Stella Adler, the great acting teacher, once explained that the word theater comes from the Greeks and means the seeing place. It's a place to come see the truth about life and our social situation. So Emily has brought that same approach to her work as artistic director and playwright. She has a remarkable range of gifts, and it's been said that she engages them around the two, perhaps, poles of her artistic sensibility, her poetic realism and creativity, her original way of doing things, and her passion for social justice. As a playwright, she's often inspired by themes related to the struggle for justice and dignity, which may go back to some of the influences earlier in her life, which we might hear about at some point. Under her leadership, the McCarter Theater has provided lots of amazing moments and great theatrical experiences for us in the region. Some of you may remember that Emily directed Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet in a production that played on September 12th, 2001, to a shell-shocked community for all of us at that point. Apparently, being at McCarter that night was like being in a sacred place, where, as Emily has said, grief was transformed into some of the most beautiful poetry in the English language. And that certainly is what theater is all about. In addition to bringing great theatrical productions to McCarter, Emily continues to be committed to commissioning, developing, and premiering new work, especially the new work being done by women playwrights, by minorities, by younger playwrights who do work that may be too risky for other theaters to think about doing. And in that way, she's bringing a voice to the voiceless around the country. I've just learned that Emily is currently writing the stage version of The Life of Gloria Steinem for the Lincoln Center Theater, and that we expect Gloria will be playing herself in that production. So look for that sometime next year or so. Emily, our region is so fortunate to have you in these roles, and clearly it's our responsibility. It's a reciprocal relationship here. It's our responsibility to provide support for great theater in our region. So let's give a warm welcome to Emily Mann.
That was so beautiful. I almost feel like I should sit down now. It's just almost impossible for me to consider that I came here for 3-5 years tops, and here I still am. And I hope people aren't looking at their watches and thinking, when is she leaving? But I'm here because of all of you. This is one of the most amazing communities I've ever had the good fortune of living in and working in, and I have worked all over this country and abroad, and I'm here because of our audience and because of all of you who make what I do matter. What I put on stage is for the audience, and it's a conversation. And the conversation I get back, the other side of the dialogue, is what keeps me alive and going all these many productions and years later. It's actually more than 125. I did a little calculation because we weren't counting all of the laboratory productions we did and second stage productions, and so it's more like closer to 150. So that's sort of interesting at 25 years to be taking stock. I thought about what would be an interesting topic to talk to you about today. I was casting around because I know so many of you who live here. We're all part of a community. And though you may not all come to McCarter regularly, I don't know whether you do or not, you do know what McCarter Theater is. And so I didn't want to sort of bang the drum about McCarter. I thought when talking to my great partner in crime, managing director Tim Shields, who is the business side of the theater, I'm the art side of the theater, I said, well, what do you think would interest the chamber? And he said, well, the coin of the realm right now in business is everyone wants to talk about creativity in the workplace. I said, okay. And he said, well, why don't you tell people how you build a production? Does that interest you? Are you interested in? Yes? Okay, good. Because if not, I could search around and find another one too. But how many of you saw Antony and Cleopatra? Okay, some of you did, some of you didn't. What it is probably the most fun production I have directed in 25 years. I would say there are many, many, many that would rival or at least come close, but I enjoyed this so much. And so I thought I would share with you why. I mean, it is a Shakespeare play. It has been done a million times before, and I thought this would be a really interesting example that it might interest you why I would take a piece, as John so eloquently was saying, I'm always looking for what is groundbreaking, what is new, what is different. Why would I pick a play, written 450 years ago that's been done a million times with movie stars and all of that? What did I have to offer or show the audience that was different? And so I thought I would talk to you a little bit about that because it was groundbreaking, and I'm going to tell you a little bit why, a little bit of the background. And then in the Q&A, if while I'm talking you have a question, the theater, we're all about communication and conversation. So if I've said something that you didn't understand or you'd like to know more about, just raise your hand or yell and I'll listen, because I really don't like talking at people. I like talking with people. So talk to me as I'm talking, if you will. Antony and Cleopatra came about because I was directing a production of color of A Streetcar Named Desire on Broadway 3 seasons ago. One of my favorite plays by Tennessee Williams, with Nicole Ari Parker playing Blanche and Blair Underwood playing Stanley, and Wood Harris from The Wire playing Mitch, and Daphne Rubin Vega playing Stella. And it was really all about bringing the New Orleans to the stage. And as Tennessee knew, living in a house owned by a free woman of color, that it was very possible for the Dubois sisters to be very fair-skinned women who, in fact, had owned a plantation, in fact, had owned slaves in the olden days, came from that very, very high-toned society, and would be very upset. Let's say their parents would have been very upset if Stella had brought Blair Underwood home. So that's where we started that, and I was working with the great jazz trumpeter and composer Terence Blanchard. So this was a fabulous production that I had a great time doing. I loved working with Nicole so much. I said, well, what do you want to play next? And she said, well, you've already given me one dream part. I dreamed all my life since I was a little girl of playing Blanche Dubois and on Broadway. I said, oh, I'm glad I gave you your dream. I said, what's your second? And she said, Cleopatra. Well, she is one of the most beautiful women on the planet. I don't know if any of you have seen her. She stops traffic when you walk with her. It's really nice to walk with her because actually taxi cabs do screech to a halt, and you go, oh, ha-ha, of course, Nicole. But it's nice to be with her. So I thought, well, that's really interesting because the first professional job I ever had in the theater was in London when I was 19 years old. Tony Richardson, the great, great film and theater director, he wrote, most of you in this room are too young to remember the movie Tom Jones, right? You do, some people are nodding. All right, well, he was a great, thank God. So he was one of my idols. I was in London. I had $200 in my pocket for the entire summer. I saw that Tony was directing at the Bankside Globe when it was still a tent. No, not yet built as one of the great, great theaters, Shakespeare theaters in the world. It was a tent on the Thames, and he was directing Vanessa Redgrave as Cleopatra. And I had just done my junior paper in college on Antony and Cleopatra, and I thought, oh, I have something to offer. I can't believe I thought this. I knocked on the door of the producer's office, Sam Wanamaker, and said, does Tony Richardson need an assistant director? And he said, well, if you will work for free. And I went, oh, yes. And so he got on the phone and said, Tony, there's this girl here who will work for free. You say you want one. Here she is. Okay. So he said, walk on over. You'll go on to meet Tony. If he doesn't think you're a fool, you're hired. So he didn't think I was a fool. I was hired. And I started work. The long and short of it was, it changed my life. I sat around a table where Vanessa Redgrave walked in. She was completely off book, by the way. This is very unusual. She walked in meaning off book, meaning she knew it by heart. So she set the bar rather high. And she sat at the table, and it was like she was levitating. I don't know if you've ever seen her on stage, but she's just one of the geniuses, and beautiful sense of language, but she's also a bit mad, and so she takes you on this journey that you don't know where you've been and how you got there. And so I watched that, and then I watched as her husband, ex-husband, Tony, directed her to make an absolutely awful performance out of what had been a purely brilliant one around the table. I thought, oh, that's very interesting. Often you learn from failure more than success, right? And I thought, I will never do that. But anyway, when you're 19, everything imprints. I knew the play by heart. And so and I'd always wanted to do it, but I thought, you can't do it without a Cleopatra. And then when Nicole said that, I went, oh my God, I have my Cleopatra. So I brought this idea to the theater, told them how much I loved this play, how much I wanted to work with Nicole. And then I realized two things. One, recently, our audiences have been a little afraid of Shakespeare. They think, oh, it's too intellectual for me. I can't follow a Shakespeare play. The language is too hard. And because I have done so much work, like John mentioned Romeo and Juliet, I cut a third of that play. I worked on every line of that play so that if a word was very old English and made it difficult to understand at first hearing, I'd change it. And I got to the point where I was feeling confident enough that I could do that. So I took Antony and Cleopatra and said, okay, what do I love about this play? It's often done at 3.5 and 4 hours. I want it to be no more than 2 hours and a little over 2 hours. How am I going to make this absolutely visceral and alive for a modern audience? So again, I went at it. I cut it down to 2 hours and 10 minutes, took out all that didn't move the plot, and then realized, well, not to sound arrogant, but while really studying this, I think Shakespeare was boring himself for at least a third of the play. It's called one of his problem plays for a good reason. He was interested in Antony and Cleopatra. He was interested in that relationship and how the passion of these two extraordinary people who were running half the world, each of them, on their own, how their intimate scenes together changed the world. How their love that both made and destroyed each other, made and destroyed empires. And because I found out he had written this for Blackfriars, not for the Globe Theater, which was an indoor theater and written for very intimate scenes, and not for the big epic things. There are no huge scenes in this play. I believed he would have agreed with me. Again, it sounds arrogant, but I felt he was on my shoulder. All right. I had to find my Antony, and because I felt that this play was about the most passionate love story ever written, and it was about passion. If you read the poetry of it, it just blows your mind how beautiful it is and how erotic it is. I thought, okay, who's going to be Antony? And all these guys who came in, who read the verse well and everything else, just were not doing it for me. And then Felicia Rashad did Fences last year. Did anyone see the August Wilson play Fences with Esau Pritchett? Well, Esau's about 6'6". Brilliant guy, musician, has played Othello, as he says, 9 times, and not much else in the Shakespeare canon. I thought, he's the perfect Antony. He's just the perfect Antony. He's got power, he's got sensuality, he's beautiful, he's brilliant, he's a great musician. We were going to do it all with live percussion. He could drum, so that Well, duh, of course, I'm gonna go with Esau. So I made a workshop. And because when you build things in the theater, it's all about relationships, chemistry, and collaboration was, no matter how beautiful Esau is, no matter how beautiful Nicole is, if the chemistry isn't there, the relationship isn't there and the play isn't there. So we did a workshop, and the two of them got on. And then I decided to get my team together and see if, in fact, I could make this soar.